Welcome to MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Paco Lebron. This is a place to learn how to run your MSP, whether you're a nimble MSP or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. I would like to introduce a very esteemed friend of mine, good colleague that I've met over the last years. He's been killing it, growing. If you haven't seen his videos on LinkedIn, marketing his services, and the man's killing it. You should be checking out how he's doing on marketing his IT business. Who am I referring to? I'm referring to Sean Inman over at Inman Technologies. Inman, how are you today?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. So I'm over here referring you to last names, first names. It's wild over these days at MSP Unplugged. But no, I appreciate you taking the time coming out. We originally, so backstory behind this interview is we actually had Sean on the podcast previously as we were recording on location at ScaleCon. Shout out to MSP Camp and Tahir Ahmed and folks over there. But the audio information, details, files, all that jigamagoo, all that stuff, it all just went to haywire. So we're re-recording these episodes, but hopefully with some current value to all of you. And so my hope is that we'll get some good value to all of you listening in here. And now we'll have a little bit more details from Sean because we kind of just pulled him from the crowd and said, hey, we want to go ahead and interview you. So he's a little bit more prepared on some of the questions that we normally do. But before we dive into Sean's story, I did want to share a story / tip. One of our community members was having a weird issue with one of his client systems. Ran through the whole community group. If you're not part of the community group, please make sure that you are in there. If you've purchased a TechCon ticket previously or a Patreon subscriber, you'll have access to that community group. If you have no idea what I'm referring to, email me at info@mspunplugged.com, and I'm happy to share more details around that. But they were kind of going into detail of certain things, and they were referring to the point of how this weird issue that was occurring, how do we go ahead and move forward with it? And so there was a bunch of suggestions. There was a lot of just all kinds of things, DNS, you name it, whatever. And it turned out that there was an app that I forgot about from my break fix days. And the app is Tweaking All-in-One. So this is one of those Hail Mary products that you run in there. There's a bunch of checkboxes that it re-registers things and fixes and all kinds of stuff. So it's usually what I used to run right before I would just nuke and pave a system, because I figure if it really worked it, I can go ahead and just nuke it at that point and solve the issue. So for those of you running into some weird Windows issues or things of that nature, Tweaking All-in-One, we'll make sure we have that link in the show notes for you to either reacquaint yourself with it or look into what it does for your system. So something to think about for any of those pesky things that you are doing for your troubleshooting needs. So, but Sean, again, really appreciate you joining us here for today. Obviously for our audience, right, there's a mixed bag of either they are, running their MSPs and they're trying to just get better at what they do. But then there's others that are running MSPs and also have a full-time job or have another thing, and they're kind of trying to figure out the transition, right? Can you walk us through kind of like your own path, right? What was your background in IT before founding Inman? What were some specific frustrations or maybe opportunities in corporate that pushed you to kind of do your own practice? Why don't you fill us a little bit in about your origin story to Inman?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Paco. Glad to be here to share. So yeah, I've got about 20 plus years of experience in IT, mainly in the corporate area. And I worked for a big retailer, and they went out of business during COVID. The writing was kind of on the wall already prior to that. And so when we saw the writing on the wall, or when I saw the writing on the wall, I started Inman Technologies as a side hustle just to get out of debt and figure out what's the next chapter. And so it really just started out doing projects, SharePoint work, just any kind of project just to make some quick money. That quickly turned into, hey, actually, we don't have an IT guy. Can you help us with more than just this project? And so quickly landed a 30 plus customer with managed services. And so like many of us that start as a side hustle, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I need? I need PSA, So went through all that, and that was in 2016 is when I was doing it as a side hustle. 2018 is when I officially made an LLC, got Inman Technologies official.
Yeah.
So from there, and I've been doing it full time since 2018. From there, it was a whirlwind of making a lot of mistakes and learning from them, finding this podcast, this community, and, hearing from guys like you and other folks that you've interviewed, and their stories, and going, okay, man, I'm not the only one that's made these mistakes, and figuring out, okay, here's a better path to take, and some better tools and things like that. Man, I started out before all that, my first introduction to computers was, Packard Bell 486, playing Oregon Trail,
Nice.
So I've always been intrigued as a youngster, and my first job was actually custom building computers at a little computer shop when those still existed. And so from there, I just started. I got lucky and had a friend that worked at the railroad, got me in there, and it's kind of escalated my corporate career from there until I started Inman Technologies, man.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's funny, right? Because like for us, I founded Prodigy Tech technically in 2011 as the side hustle, and then didn't formally register it until 2013, right? So it's always one of those where it's like, we're gonna hit next Sunday 13 years, but technically it's been 15, right? And so it's been one of those where you get, these hurdles and obstacles and opportunities, right? Is the word I've been using lately. And what we use internally for things that we can improve on, things that we can scale and emphasize. It's a learning lesson, right? It's never a bad thing, a mistake. Just to be able to communicate them, right, through something like this, or being able to just talk to your fellow IT pro and just let them know, hey, this is, yeah, I've done that. And I wouldn't go down that road, but your mileage may vary type situation, right? So now you are a CISSP, right? And in regards to that, you've emphasized that the biggest cybersecurity risk isn't tech, it's people, right? And so from your experience, running obviously client facing services and things of that nature, is there any mindset, or as you went into running Inman Technologies, to turn the human firewall, right, from just training and checking the box, but have you done anything to implement to help reduce incidents, right? Are there any things you put in place for, you've heard stories that have helped you kind of push the mission along, or tell me a little bit about how you've been treating that piece, right? Because I feel like nowadays, especially everything you hear, it's always either it was an exploit because something wasn't patched, or someone did something they weren't supposed to, right? And I'm not referring to clicking emails and things of that nature. They're opening ports to a Plex server or something like that, right? So, how have you treated those human firewalls, right? And really addressing the human behavior when, now running Inman?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a big believer in education, and so we not only we do like every MSP should be doing, and we send out our monthly security awareness trainings, phishing, stuff like that. We preach all the time. Us humans are the weakest link in the security chain, because we just don't know what we don't know. We're very curious beings. Man, I press upon our techs when they're working with a client and they're fixing an issue, really explaining, taking a little bit of extra time to explain the why, why this broke, when it makes sense, right? And in very non-technical terms. And so that they understand, hey, okay, I'm not going to do that again because I had to spend an hour on the phone to get it fixed. And then, you mentioned emails. That's the number one vector for the attackers. I just did a security awareness training webinar yesterday, and we had a ton of prospects on there, and just educating them on the just the normal every apply at a business, but also apply personally. So we try to make sure that our end users understand like everything that we're doing and training and teaching them about passwords and not password reuse, things like that affects their business. It also affects them at home. And so making it more personable, and so that they know, okay, this doesn't just apply at work, I can use this at home, makes it where the end user psychologically is like, I'm going to do better because it also affects me personally. Yeah, so that's kind of how we approach it. And I really press upon our techs to spend that extra time explaining the why.
Gotcha. I mean, I think that's a big piece, right? Where, being able to articulate to a client in English, right? Because sometimes we speak into these terms and it can be, it can go over the client's head. If you get the chance to really have that rapport with them, speak to them, understanding, hey, here's why it happened. It's amazing on how many times you can really prevent unplanned work because of that, right?
Yeah.
And really having the ability to just say, hey, we didn't just check the box and send a CSAT and then hope to get the feedback afterwards, because you do get those replies like, hey, yeah, it's fixed, but like, I'm just curious, why did it happen, right? Because that's our innate question all the time, right? So being proactive and really driving into that fact allows you to not only continue to keep building that rapport, but also driving in that, hey, we realize this is an issue, the human, right? And here's what we can try to do to help alleviate some of those, to really calm the fears. Because I feel like media right now, they're always highlighting a lot of the exploitations, the threat vectors that are out there and all these hacks, but we're not really diving into, hey, this is the reason why, in a manner that's going to be understandable to the viewer, right? So that's awesome that you're continuing to do that, building that practice, building that ability to communicate with them as well. Now, shifting a little bit to the audience, right? And as and we hear this at events and other IT pros that we talk to, in managed services, they struggle to shift from break fix to a proactive and a preventive model, right? How did you structure Inman's technology to make IT boring, reliable, and secure for your clients, right? Because I think that's the model you follow for as you advertise and show what your services are all about. How was that transition if you went from one or the other, or just to implement that? And were there any pitfalls of you implementing that, moving clients from one to the other? And then maybe any, I don't know, I want to say advice, but like things you want to say, like, hey, if you're going to do this, this is probably something you're going to keep in mind because this is what bit me in the end.
Yeah. So fortunately, whenever I started, I didn't start as a break fix, so I didn't have to try to convert hourly, clients. I had some project stuff that's pretty easy to. I think it's easier to convert that into, hey, we're gonna sell you a managed service that includes some project hours, and you kind of bake that in to your offer, and then as time goes, that fades away, and then you're billing for projects after that, right? Separately from your offer. I think for me, like the hardest part when I first started was figuring out what my offer was going to be. And I think, we can still struggle with that today. I mean, I know every year I look back and I'm like, okay, this is what I was offering last year. What can I do better for this year? And I do that not just yearly, but kind of semi-year, like biannual. So I try to look at it a little bit during the year, whether that's I need to improve my tech stack a little bit or take something out, replace it. But I think, for somebody starting out new or that is trying to go from break fix to managed services, what I would suggest is spending a lot of time researching what you're going to offer, being able to explain what you're going to offer in clear, like non-technical standards. A lot of these businesses that they don't want to know your tech stack. They don't want to know, what tools you're using and how you're going to do X, Y, Z. They want to know what outcomes they're going to get from partnering with you. And so really figuring that out, because I know when I first started, I was like, man, we're a cybersecurity first company. We have this EDR, this, and they're like, I have no idea who Huntress is. And what is a SOC? Right. And so really reframing that, and it's taken me years and talking with a number of MSP sales gurus, reading a ton of books, listening to this podcast, like figure out, okay, what am I going to offer without explaining my tech tools, all my tech stack, because at the end of the day, they don't really care. And if they do, they're probably going to be a hard customer to work with if they're asking you, hey, what EDR are you using? Oh no, we don't want that one. Okay, well, I'm not switching up my tech stack for you. I just had a prospect I was talking to. He was like, well, who do you use for pen testing? Who do you use for this? And what do you do? I'm like, hey, hold on a minute, man. Like, I'm going to sell you a service and you're just going to have to like trust and rely on what we do as a practice.
Right.
And so it ended up not being a good fit. And I think that would be my next thing is not every business out there is going to be a good fit. And so, not trying to cast a wide net and try to scoop up every business, figure out who your ideal client is once you have the offer.
Yeah, no, there's so much to unpack that I want to address on each piece. And then I actually have a follow-up question in regards to the offering of managed services and projects. But going back to the offerings, right? I think it's very interesting in how there's so many different offerings that every MSP can provide, right? There's good, better, best. There is gold, the emeralds, the rhinestones, whatever. I forgot what the term it is on those particular minerals, all that sort of deal, right? You hear 360 more times than you care to hear, right? And so, for us, what we did for our offering is we adhered to the CIS framework, and we do it through their implementation groups that are identified. And for those that don't know what CIS is, it's the Center of Internet Security Organization. I believe it's CIS.org, if I'm not correct, but I will have it in the show notes. And they'll go through. There's 18 controls. Here's what each control is in each group. You build along, and then you document appropriately, right? And so that's what we've done over the last several years to kind of highlight that. And it sounds cool, but to your point, right, your client is not going to care about that type of stuff. And the only way that they'll ever hear about that is either A, they're technically savvy, or someone's trying to do an audit of some sort, whether it's the insurance or governance or something of that nature, and they're asking you as the subject matter expert, right? Which plays into the qualification of clients as well, right? Or prospects, because I'll tell you, there was one prospect that I had where I heard the CEO say, yeah, I'm on the road and I just need to get to my email. I don't have to worry about logging into a VPN so I can be secure. I just want my email. And if I'm the CEO, just let me have it. No problem. I think I'm going to pray for your IT service provider because we're not taking you on. So, there's little things like that, right? That you try to look through, focus on, things of that nature. But on the flip side, we're always trying to, when you start off, you have to take what you can get, right? You're trying to get the revenue in place. You're trying to do what's right. If you are doing this full time, you have to do what you have to do, unfortunately, in the beginning, and then hopefully have the opportunity to wean off or replace the bad dollars with the good dollars, right? But the hope is you're doing it front facing and you've built an opportunity to start good and to continue with good, right? But there was a comment you made where you said, hey, normally what we used to do or our process was we would sometimes have projects and then converting those over into managed services with project hours baked in. I'm curious on your experience and philosophy in regards to the difficulty on you've interviewed a prospect. It sounds like there are a lot of project work and there's an opportunity for managed services, would you take on that client either before or now you are doing it differently, project work to then upsell managed services? Or you, hey, look, we really need to get you on a managed service plan with these projects enabled? And if so, how are you pitching that to the client who believes they only need these projects to go ahead and move forward with?
Great question. And I've got a project client slash prospect for managed services that I'm dealing with right now.
Okay.
They found us online here local in Fort Worth, and they needed some help they wanted to defederate from GoDaddy to just Microsoft, right? And we know that, that's easy. Our buddy at Tech Minus, and that's it, right? Or T Minus has, T Minus 365 has a great document on how to do all that. It's been posted in the community many times. And I'm like, oh yeah, we can do that. And, we'll do it as a project. I said, but, tell me a little bit about your company. So I always try to get them to tell me a little bit about their company, some of their pain points before we agree to doing a project. And it really depends on the project too, right? And so, I'm talking to this prospect, and they're just a small little 5-user company right now. They went to Best Buy and bought some laptops to start this thing. They're a real estate company, and so they're all about just, hey, we gotta sell so we can, make some money and be able to do this. And I'm like, okay, I completely agree. So my tactic is I'm going to meet the prospect where they are. And so right now where I am with this guy is right now they just need some project work to get their company going. And so, we did this project, we defederated them, made sure their Microsoft tenant was secure as it could be with the licensing that they had. That was the other thing, is they had just Microsoft standard. So like you can only configure Microsoft so much. And, we made sure some of their DNS stuff was set correctly so that they didn't have email deliverability issues, all included in that little project. A couple weeks go by, I'm still emailing him saying, hey, I just want to, let me share with you a quote on what managed services would look like. And just by the way, part of our onboarding included everything that I've already done, plus some that we haven't been able to do yet. And I'll waive the onboarding because it was at the end of the year. And I was running, I'm like, I'm the owner, so I can make that decision, right? And so he's like, well, we're just not ready. And blah, blah, blah. And then a couple weeks later, emails me again, hey, we're having email deliverability issues. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I made sure everything was set correctly with the DMARCs and DKIMs and all that. We go in and look. Somebody went into their GoDaddy instance and removed SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. I'm like, well, yeah, no wonder you're having email deliverability issues. And I went, and then GoDaddy, you can see who made it, who did the changes, and it was the owner. I said, so then there was another opportunity where I said, as part of our managed services, we monitor all of this for you, and any DNS changes, like we would make all those for you if they are needed. I said, so this is why your emails are not going and you're having issues receiving. And oh, by the way, you're on 3 blacklists now. So we were, that was a whole nother project so we're really close into converting them based on those conversations. And I think the key thing was, I think as an owner, we always want that reoccurring revenue. Because it's promised, right? Especially when you have a multi-year agreement, stuff like that. But we want to meet the client where they are, meet the prospects where they are, and then just continue to nurture and build that relationship to eventually that MRR. There's some owners that don't want to do that. I tend to want to do that. I'm trying to, my goal is to be the #1 MSP in Fort Worth, Texas, that businesses look to come to. And my philosophy and belief is you have to meet the client where they are, the prospect where they are, and earn their respect.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, and you've heard me on this podcast multiple times. There's so many different ways to run your business in the way that you find yourself to be successful, right? And so, and that's cool to hear. Like you're meeting with them directly, see where they're at. For me, I always used to get bit on those projects where, especially conversions, because there's issues afterwards and we don't know what's going on. So what I've done is I'll lump in an extra X amount of hours for like their support. And then once it runs out, it's like, all right, well, I think you really need to get into a managed services agreement so that we're just not nickel and diming you now. And here's the benefits why, right? And so that has helped us a lot in transitioning and things of that nature. A hard transition, because I have found that it's harder to move someone from a project to a managed services and with project hours versus doing the managed services with projects. But again, it's all down to, who can afford, $150 to $200 a user, if depending on what you're including in your services. Obviously some demographics will vary, and depending on what you're offering, whether it's help desk / service desk, network operation stuff, and security stuff, right? If you're including it all together, with that understanding as well. But you made a comment, right? You want to be obviously the best MSP in Fort Worth, right? And then running an MSP like yours in such a competitive space like that, what's been the hardest part for you to scale a team, right? To maintain not only just high touch, right? Because it sounds like you're having those conversations with your clients and things of that nature, but also maintaining security standards. Is it hard to find people? How are you like doing knowledge sharing with a small operation? How is that affecting your running of the MSP in the competitive space of Fort Worth? Because my opinion of always is there's so much work in every main city, and plus there's demographics of clients and ICP of clients that are not for everyone else as well. So I'm just curious on how's you're looking at that, and what's the hardest part, in growing your business staff wise as needed.
Yeah. So what my goal is to be the cybersecurity authority in the Fort Worth space. And so how I'm doing that is a lot of public, social media. I got invited to a local summit where the mayor's going to be at, and some large business owners. I've been speaking at local banks and their customers, their business customers. Partnered with a insurance firm that's based out of Oklahoma City, but they have a really big office here in Fort Worth, and got to know the risk. So our ideal client is the construction space and the trades. And so we really try to focus on that. To answer your question, how do we keep our staff our techs trained up on the security? Just like, you mentioned at the beginning, I'm a CISSP certified. I have to have so many CPs a year. When I go to a training for my CPs, I encourage, and sometimes depending on the topic, I make it a requirement for my techs to attend as well, or go listen to the video, the recording afterwards. So they stay up with that. We also are a subscriber to Empath. And so I have them on some of the cybersecurity tracks and different technical tracks, where they're constantly being fed there as well. Any of the platforms that we use, Huntress, they're always having some training. So really wanting them to learn and be the experts in that platform, and the different platforms that we use.
Gotcha.
We're still a small shop. So we support about 280 not clients, I wish, endpoints. And so I have a belief that I feel a good rate of endpoints is, around 150 endpoints per tech, is a good, I think, a happy space. We just brought on our second tech. He's a senior engineer, super smart dude. And so I'm adding techs as we add customers and our asset counts go up.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of how we're handling that.
Okay. Now you mentioned, you're talking to banks, you're talking to a lot of prospects, you're having conversations, you're doing webinars, and so when you get to the prospect call, right, and you kind of explain to them, you're talking about, because and sometimes you hear, well, I don't even know if I need IT, right, or I'm doing it on my own, or they have I don't know what I don't know, but then you're also greeted with we're too small to be targeted, or is your services really needed for my size business, et cetera? Is there any quick, like, qualifying questions or diagnostic questions that you ask prospects to kind of open their mind to reveal, like, oh, wait, there is a gap there. Oh, yeah, there is something from there. Is there something that's a go-to for you when you hear something like that, where it's like, has been, I want to say a silver bullet, but helps you open and continue the conversation versus, I just don't know?
Yeah. So one thing I always lead with that is I ask, are you a Microsoft 365 customer? Are you using their, business email? And that allows me to then say, okay, if they're in the real estate space, they're emailing all kinds of email domains, Gmail, Yahoo, right?
Yep.
Well, we all know as MSP techs and owners, Google and Yahoo just turned on, hey, you got to have DMARC, you got to have DCAN, all that has to be properly configured, or you're going to have email deliverability issues. And so we talk more on the email side of it, and then the Microsoft security, saying, hey, out of the box, Microsoft doesn't come very, very secure. And there's a number of policies that we got to tweak, and they make changes all the time. And so we come in and say, it doesn't matter if you have one account or 100 accounts. It only takes one to start the issue, right? To cause a security incident. I don't like to use the word breach, because I feel like that's more of a fear-based selling. So I like to use the word security incidents. When you say breach, like, you got to get insurance involved at that point. You got to do all kinds of other things. So we look at it like that. And then we even offer, like, hey, we'll do a free Microsoft 365 tenant audit to kind of show you, where you are and what's missing, and where your gaps are and what can happen. And then that usually is like, okay, they're more interested in our services at that point.
Gotcha.
And we've had some people go, well, can I just pay you to fix Microsoft? And I'm like, yeah, you can pay us to fix it, but it doesn't stay fixed. I'm like, there's not a point in time, like security configure, like it moves, they add new things as threats change. And so, like, there's constant tweaking of your email security settings, things like that. And so really just explaining to them what they don't know, but making sure we explain it in their language, right? So if you have to break it down to where a 10-year-old can understand it, sometimes you have to do it like that.
Yeah, it's amazing on how, providing the guidelines and just, hey, let's just get here. Let's get to the baseline, right? There's a phrase we used to use a lot internally, is let's get to good. I understand there's a lot of these things that we want to do, and there's a lot of whatever. Let's get to good, because 85%, 90% of all MSPs are not even doing get to good. Like, you hear all of this cool stuff of, like, you should be, tracking elevation of users, notified when something's plugged into the network, let's blah, blah, blah. Do you have SPF, DMARC, and DKIM set up on all your clients?
Exactly.
Have you checked to make sure their SSLs are up to date if you're managing their domains? Have you made sure 2FA is on for everything? Do you have a report that you can confirm encryption is on? Like, these, I say these, and I'm sure people are like, come on, guy, like, seriously, you think we're idiots? But you'd be surprised on how inconsistent people are with that. Have you even confirmed that all your passwords for Microsoft 365 for your clients that you're using as admin logins, have you even confirmed that all the admins are noted and taken care of in there, right? Are you using a tool like we just shouted out Nick Ross earlier, Cloud Capsule, to transition something of that nature? And there are others in the space, Inside Agent, Octiga, to name a few. Are you using something to visibly see that, right? there's such low hanging fruit to take care of that it's just amazing. Have you confirmed that your IDS and IDP is enabled on all your integrated routers? Right. I can tell you 85, 90% who say, and I'm going to get so much crap for this, but for everyone that is putting in a firewall, are you just leaving it on and cool? Or are you enabling the actual IDS and IDP so that the man in the middle attacks don't occur? Right. Because that's what you're supposed to do. That's the point of the firewall. You got to capture the traffic in and out. That's what we want to do.
Yep.
But no, you're just putting in routers. And so at that point, if you're just putting in routers, are you doing a disservice to your client by, selling them all these great security pieces when you can't even get the foundation of things going, right? So anyway, that's my harp on there. Let's go ahead and round out this episode. I'm gonna give you a couple of rapid fire fellow techie questions, see what you got for me in here. What's your favorite underrated security tool or practice right now? Oh, I think we lost you. Oh, there you go. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think we lost you for a second.
Oh, okay. Underrated, or what was the other one?
Favorite underrated security tool or practice right now?
Man, I think a lot of. I'm going to take it back to how we started with the human firewall. I think it's up to us to make sure that our clients' users are doing the training that we're sending them. We all have it in our offer. We all say that humans are the weakest link, but are we looking at the reports and sharing those reports with the leadership of our clients and saying, hey, here's your weakest links? They're not completing the training. We work with our clients to help them create, to gamify it, or to, the gamify works the best, and we'll even, if they're not down with it, we'll say, hey, we'll give a $50 Amazon card to your, the user on your staff that does the best, right, or whatever. So I'll say that I think a lot of us MSP owners, we tend to, and techs, we tend to forget about the security awareness training side of the house, and reviewing that data and those reports and sharing those.
But I'll tell you, sometimes, if you don't pick a good security awareness training platform, I remember back in 2018, 19, whenever we were looking at the time, the amount of dry content and security awareness training that's there. Because I remember I used to hate doing that in corporate America. So I make sure to, so when we chose ours, I made sure to make sure that if someone that's going to be engaging, they're going to like it, they're going to look forward to it at small increments. Because I'll tell you what, you security awareness training vendors out there that have been around for who knows how long, man, up your content game, because that is dry as all heck. But anyway, next rapid fire question that I have is, what's your biggest I wish I knew this sooner lesson from building the business?
Man, I wish I knew. I wish I knew how to sell better back in the day when I first started this. As much as we all preach now, hey, you can't speak the tech jargon. You can't, you got to speak their language. It's hard for techs to do that. And especially technicians have become owners, and most of us, we're small shops. So we're our own salespeople. So I wish I had taken more time to learn a formal sales process and speaking language around selling the offer. Then instead of spending so much time building the tech stack, but that's what I enjoyed at the time. So yeah, I wish I would have spent a little bit more time learning that, and joined some communities. You mentioned in the green room, we mentioned Robin Robbins and some other sales platforms or training frameworks. I'm actually listening to you can never stop learning. I'm actually listening to Brian Gillette's his new book that he released at the end of last year. It just became available on Audible, and I like to listen to it, especially if the author is the one narrating it. Ryan Gillette, or like heard him, like he's got that voice, and where you can kind of be captivated. And so I've been listening to that on the way in and way home from work and to work. So
nice. If you could automate one tedious MSP task overnight, what would that be?
Oh, automate. Man, what would I automate? Man, we've automated a lot. Like us building automation, or use a tool that automates it?
Whichever you resides with you.
Yeah. So we like Evo Security, and we use their automated password rotation. And I'm actually working on building an automation into our own developed platform for knowledge base and managing our internal stuff. So I'm working with their dev team and APIs. They haven't released it yet, but to do similar how IT Glue and CyberQP, you can sync passwords from different other, like Evo and CyberQP. I'm building my own version of IT Glue and or Hoodoo, if you will. And so I'm wanting to sync those in. So that's another automation that we're going to have. But right now it's automating that piece of it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm actually curious. We won't do it for this show, but I'm curious as to why you're building something versus using what's out there. So we'll keep that for those that attend TechCon. They can ask that question, and we'll figure out how far along you are in that development. Right. Last question for you, and I'm starting to ask this to all MSPs I either run into or hear, and I may even ask to do this in person. In 18 months, or let's say 24 months. You know what, let's do it even better. In 5 years, what are you going to do if what you're doing now is no longer what you do anymore? What would you be doing?
I would be sitting on the side of the road with my smoker trailer selling barbecue.
All right. That's fair one. What's your choice of meat normally for hitting the cook-off there?
Oh man, you got to go with brisket, beef, man. If it's not that, it's pork. So
I'm Puerto Rican. Pork is in our bloodline, so that's actually sounds good to me. Well, Sean, I appreciate you jumping on here, having some little bit of fun with us, sharing your story. If there's anyone who's listening here who wants to kind of tag in, poke your brain, or just connect, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Man, just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn, and always willing to connect with a fellow MSP to just talk shop or help answer any questions that you may have. So yeah, LinkedIn's the best way.
Awesome. Cool. Again, Sean, appreciate you coming out here, and I appreciate you all tuning in here. Tune in every week. You can catch us on the video podcast, youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button so that you're notified whenever an episode is available. We are also all on your favorite podcatcher, so you can take us with you on the go. Head over to MSPUnplugged.com. You'll see all the icons of the podcatchers there. Click on one, subscribe, and you'll be able to take us with you anywhere you go, as I've mentioned. TechCon Unplugged. I mentioned that I would be making an announcement when this episode airs. I apologize. We are working on the final details of that. I will hopefully have an announcement here in the next week or two, finalizing the venue, finalizing everything from that side. We should have answers to you for where that is. And when we make that announcement, we'll make sure that we have all those details as well. We're just working on the pretty things, websites, all that sort of deal. So it's taking us a little bit longer than I expected, but we'll make sure to let you all know. The community knows where we're going to be. But if you're not part of the community, again, join us. If you don't know how to join us, email me at info@mspunplugged.com. So with that, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.